Welcome to the deep dive. You've shared a really interesting set of articles with us this week, looking at, well, everything from the basics of natural language processing right up to how we're building apps now.
Yeah, and what really jumps out across all of them is this pretty fundamental evolution.
You mean how we interact with computers?
Exactly. It's this shift, this move away from, let's call it traditional coding.
Like writing out every single line of logic?
Towards something more like prompt-driven interaction.
It feels like a genuine game changer, like how we actually get technology to do what we want it to do.
It really is. And what's fascinating looking at these sources is just how basic that change is in how we approach computation.
Right. For anyone used to coding, it's always been about those super precise step-by-step instructions.
The careful crafting of logic, algorithms.
Debugging.
Yeah, all that. But now the focus seems to be shifting more towards just saying what you want, articulating the goal.
That's the core of it. And you're right, it can feel a bit backwards at first. Definitely. We're so ingrained in thinking about commands, very granular stuff.
But the idea emerging now, and it's clear in these articles, is we tell the computer what we want.
Yeah, and it figures out more of the how itself.
A lot of the how, yeah.
Yeah.
Which brings up a key point from several of these pieces.
Which is?
How do we actually make that mental leap? How do we bridge that gap in our thinking?
Okay.
Well, the key insight seems to be recognizing we're moving away from needing to spell out every single tiny operation.
Like we used to.
Towards expressing our intent.
Yeah.
And then, letting the tech underneath handle more of the actual execution.
I liked the analogy in one of the blog posts you sent about cooking. That clicked for me.
Oh, the recipe one.
Yeah. Like moving from writing this super detailed recipe, every single measurement, every instruction.
Meticulously planned out.
To just telling a chef, hey, I'd like a delicious Italian pasta dish.
Exactly. And the chef uses their skill, their knowledge to make it happen.
So the chef is the AI.
Precisely. In the context of the material we're looking at, the chef here is often a large language model, an LLM.
Right.
And these models are increasingly taking on that job, that responsibility of figuring out the how based on the prompts we give them.
Okay, so let's dive into that. That's really the mission for this deep dive, isn't it? Understanding the fundamentals of prompting, what makes it tick, the key components.
Absolutely. And what's crucial to grasp, as several articles stress, is that a good prompt isn't just random words you throw at an AI.
No.
No, there's a structure to it. Generally, you can break it down into, say, 3 main parts.
Okay, what are they?
Context, instructions, and then thinking about the desired output.
Context, instructions, desired output. Got it. Let's take context first. Based on the research here, what does that actually mean in prompting?
Think of context as setting the stage. You're giving the LLM the background info it needs.
So it knows what you're talking about.
Pretty much. So it can properly understand your request. Like, say you wanted to write a product description. You'd give it the key features, right? The main benefits for the customer, maybe even who your target audience is.
Ah, I see. So all that background stuff gives it the essential context. It needs to generate something actually relevant and hopefully effective.
Exactly. It's about giving it the data points it needs to work within a specific area or just understand the details of your ask.
Makes sense. Okay, next up, instructions. That sounds pretty straightforward.
It is, basically. Instructions are where you tell the LLM very explicitly what you want it to do.
Right.
Well, a simple one could be write a short, engaging product description.
Yeah.
But the real power here, and this is something the more advanced guides you shared really dig into, is the ability to add layers of detail, granularity.
Layers of detail? Like what? Tell me more.
Well, you can really fine-tune it. You can specify the tone. Should it be formal, professional, or more casual, funny?
Okay.
You can dictate the style. Maybe you want it to sound like a particular writer.
Huh, interesting.
You can define the specific target audience, or even insist it includes certain keywords for SEO, for example.
Wow, okay. That's way more control than just a basic command. So context, instructions, and the last one was desired output. Do we always have to spell that out in the prompt?
Not always explicitly, no, but it's something you definitely need to consider. The best prompting guides really highlight this.
Why is that?
Because knowing the format you need the response in, is it a paragraph, a bullet list, maybe structured data like JSON?
Right.
That knowledge significantly shapes how you actually phrase the prompt, and ultimately it influences the kind of output you're likely to get back.
Okay, so we've kind of dissected the prompt itself, context instructions considering the output format. Now, let's talk about the engine driving all this, these large language models, LLMs. What exactly are they, and, what makes them such a leap forward, according to this material?
Well, what's truly staggering, and this point comes up again and again in the sources, is the sheer volume of text data they've been trained on.
Like how much?
It's hard to quantify exactly. But think, massive portions of the internet, countless books, academic papers, just an unprecedented amount of human writing.
Wow.
And this huge exposure, combined with their underlying design, their architecture, is built to spot complex patterns in language.
Yeah, okay.
It lets them grasp relationships between words and concepts in a way older systems just couldn't. That's why they can understand and generate text that feels, well, remarkably human-like sometimes.
It's kind of mind-boggling, the scale. And they
Yeah.
can do more than just spit out text, right? The articles mention other capabilities.
Oh, absolutely. As many of these pieces detail, they're getting incredibly good at translating languages. They can summarize long articles into, quick takeaways. They can generate creative stuff, poetry, scripts.
Really?
Yeah. And they can even tackle complex, open-ended questions, even weird ones, sometimes giving surprisingly insightful answers.
So what's the secret sauce then? What's the key innovation that lets LLMs do this when older natural language processing models kind of struggled?
The big leap forward is really in their ability to understand context and generate text that's semantically relevant.
Semantically relevant, meaning?
Meaning it makes sense in terms of meaning, not just grammar. Earlier models, they often struggled with the nuances.
Right.
They might recognize words, but they'd miss the bigger picture, the connections between words in a sentence or across a whole text. LLMs have a much, much deeper grasp of those contextual links.
That makes total sense. You can see how understanding the context better leads to outputs that are actually coherent and, genuinely useful.
Exactly. But, and this is a big but, that some of the more critical analyses in our sources bring up.
The limitations.
Yes, LLMs aren't perfect. They're not magic. What are some of the key things we need to watch out for when we're prompting?
That's a crucial point, yeah. It's mentioned across several articles because they learn from these enormous data sets.
Which aren't always perfect themselves.
Right. They can sometimes reproduce patterns or associations from that data in ways you don't expect or ways you don't want. Bias, for instance.
Bias is a big one. They can also sometimes generate outputs that sound totally plausible, really convincing.
But are actually wrong.
But are completely made up, not based on facts. It's sometimes called hallucinating.
Hallucinations, right. Heard that term.
And then, of course, sometimes the output just doesn't quite make logical sense. It can be a bit nonsensical.
So even with these incredibly powerful tools, crafting those prompts carefully, that skill is still absolutely vital.
Oh, completely. It's essential if you want reliable, accurate results. The quality of the prompt basically dictates the quality of the output.
Garbage in, garbage out still applies.
In a way, yes. A more nuanced version of it, maybe. And, to really appreciate how far we've come with LLMs, it helps to look back.
At the history.
Yeah, look at some of the earlier ways we tried to interact with computers using text. Some of the historical papers you shared touch on this.
Okay, I'm curious about that. What were some of the precursors, the early steps towards this prompt-driven world?
Well, one of the absolute classics, going way back to the 1960s, is a program called ELIZA.
ELIZA, what did it do?
It simulated a psychotherapist, a very simple one.
A therapist chatbot from the 60s?
Sort of, but what's interesting is how it worked. It engaged in a very basic kind of conversation using pattern matching.
Pattern matching.
Yeah, it would spot certain keywords in what you type, mother, father, depressed, things like that.
Okay.
And then it would respond based on a set of pre-programmed rules linked to those keywords.
Wow. That sounds incredibly basic compared to talking to a modern LLM.
Oh, it was extremely rudimentary. ELIZA had zero actual understanding.
It didn't know what the words meant.
Not at all. It just reflected your statements back, maybe turning them into questions or used very generic follow-up lines. Its ability to grasp context or generate anything truly new was basically non-existent.
A totally different league. Okay, what else? What other early attempts were there?
Well, think about something maybe more familiar. Early search engines.
Like typing keywords into Alta Vista or something.
Exactly. When you wanted info, you typed in keywords. That keyword search was, in a way, an early form of prompting.
Huh. Never thought of it like that, but yeah.
You were giving it a short, specific input to get related results back.
But again, the limitations were huge, weren't they?
Definitely. You couldn't have a real conversation with it.
No asking follow-up questions or anything.
Right. And you couldn't ask it to, say, synthesize information or understand complex, abstract ideas.
Refining your search was just trying different keywords.
Pretty much. Trial and error.
Yeah.
It couldn't truly understand the intent behind your search query like a modern LLM tries to.
So if we boil down the main problems with those pre-LLM approaches to prompting, what would they be?
Looking back at those examples, Eliza, early search.
Yeah.
What really stands out is, first, a fundamental lack of understanding context.
Right.
Second, very limited ability to generate anything beyond fixed responses or lists of results. Third, a heavy reliance on strict, rigid rules and patterns.
Okay.
And finally, just an inability to really handle the fluidity and complexity of normal human language.
And that really throws the current situation into sharp relief, doesn't it? The sheer scale of the change with LLMs.
It's a completely different landscape now.
Yeah.
It's truly transformative.
We've gone from,
Yeah.
simple keyword matching and canned responses
To a point where we can have dynamic, almost conversational interactions.
plus creating all sorts of complex creative content.
Exactly. It just wasn't possible
It
before.
really feels like a foundational shift. We're moving towards something much more intuitive, more human-centric.
I think so. A way of interacting with computers where we can use our own language, more or less, and they can understand and respond in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
And that really circles back to the main takeaway from digging into these sources today.
Which is?
We've looked at this fundamental shift, right? Moving from that painstaking step-by-step coding
To this new way of guiding AI through prompts.
by giving it context, clear instructions, and thinking carefully about the output you need.
Context, instructions, output. The 3 pillars.
You got it.
And for those of you listening who want to get more hands-on with this, our next deep dive will be all about the practical side.
We'll be exploring effective prompting techniques, specific strategies you can actually use.
To get the best possible results out of these powerful large language models. So stay tuned for that.
Definitely. And maybe just a final thought to leave you with.
Go for it.
As our interactions with tech become more and more based on natural language, how do you think our relationship with these tools will keep evolving? What other forms of language or guidance, maybe even beyond text prompts like we focus on today, what might emerge down the road?
That's fascinating.